Caution! The AJ and Quill show contains D&D content and is intended for a D&D audience. And, besides that, they're really weird. Hi everybody, I'm your friendly neighborhood tiefling, AJ. This is my familiar, Quill the Dragon, and you're watching Total Party Quill, your one-stop for monster tactics for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
Greetings, puny humans. You look delicious.
Wizards of the Coast recently announced that they were releasing a new adventure called Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. And to help prepare everybody for that adventure coming out, we're going to be going over what monsters we think are going to be encountered inside that module. But let's dive on in. If you got questions, we got answers. Let's get spoilery. Actually, we don't know if this is going to be a spoiler. We haven't really read the actual campaign yet because it's not coming out for another 3 months.
I can't wait.
So these are just an educated guess on what we think the monsters you're going to encounter are. We've used information taken from what's been officially released as well as past campaigns and modules like Legacy of the Crystal Shard. But since what we're saying could actually contain some spoilers, if you're not okay with that, you can just fast forward to the end of the video and check out Quill's joke of the day. But for everybody else who wants to know what we think you could encounter in that upcoming module, let's get into it. Rime of the Frostmaiden is set in Icewind Dale. That's a region in northern Faerun that's made famous by the Dritz novels, written by R.A. Salvatore. It's said to be inspired by John Carpenter's The Thing, Ridley Scott's Alien, and H.P. Lovecraft's Mountains of Madness. We want you to keep these themes in mind when we're discussing monsters later on, as they'll come into play for why we pick certain monsters.
Players will have to solve the mystery surrounding the eternal winter in Icewind Dale, all the while tackling themes of paranoia, isolation, and the ever-present cold.
Now the plot is set in 1450 DR, or Dale Reckoning. Those are how they track years in Forgotten Realms. That's a time when the gods were cast out of the upper realms and sent down to the material plane to walk the lands as mortals. And the second Sundering, which happened in 1480 DR, which also marks the beginning of 5th edition.
That means this campaign takes place approximately 42 years before Waterdeep Dragon Heist.
Now this does beg the question about how we got back in time like that. Do you start at 1450 DR in the campaign, or is there some kind of time travel element?
Personally, I'm hoping for time travel. That's always fun.
Now the story so far is that Auril is hiding in Icewind Dale. Auril, much like the other gods during this time period, is mortal and walking the land. She's in Icewind Dale, hiding from other gods or beings that would wish to kill her. Who this is, we don't know. She's been known to steal power from other slumbering gods and primordials. 1450 is also the time period when Auril supposedly sent down a bunch of her vassals to Calamsham to stop the fighting between the Djinn Callum and the Efreet Memnon. And you can find this all in Dungeons & Dragons lore. Supposedly when this happened, the Callum Desert was actually frosted over for a few months as well. Could she be hiding from these two powerful genies? Is she hiding from other gods? We don't know, she's just there and hiding.
This also marks the end of the second era of Skyfire in Calamsham.
And while Auril's in Icewind Dale, she's magically somehow preventing the sun from coming up and creating an eternal winter. It's causing everything to freeze, the nights are longer, the days are shorter. But let's discuss actual enemies. The main enemy, or at least the one that's themed out in this book, is Auril herself.
The Frostmaiden uses a new 5th edition mechanism where a creature can be destroyed, but instantly takes on a new form. Much like mythic leveling, Auril is one tough cookie for any party that chooses to engage her. She has 3 distinct forms, each with its own stat block inside the module.
Right, and the first form is called the Old Crone. It's a mix of an owl and a human and a bear and a wolf, and you can actually see it detailed out on the cover of the module.
Her second form is the Brittle Maiden, a svelte, feminine woman made of ice.
And this is the form that she's most well known for, especially through a lot of the literature. It's a beautiful, elven-like woman, made entirely of ice or who has blue skin.
Her third form is a radiant diamond. This is considered her most primal form.
And the actual holy symbol for Auril in the Forgotten Realms is this diamond shape with an image of a snowflake inside it. Coincidentally, this is the same image that they use for the Queen of Air and Darkness, one of the Archfey that is also part of the Forgotten Realms mythos. Supposedly, you're meant to get the sense that you're fighting Auril backwards in time, starting with her old crone form, devolving all the way to her most primal form.
Much like how Strahd is a cruel reflection of his domain, Auril is a reflection of hers. and Icewind Dale is as cruel and unforgiving as she is. The actual land, Icewind Dale, is your second primary enemy.
If you look in the Dungeon Master's Guide, on page 110, you can see rules for extreme weather, including extreme cold and frigid waters. The module is also said to contain information on how to deal with avalanches and snowstorms. Now, because Icewind Dale is your second primary enemy, you have to include all the animals and creatures you would expect to find in an Arctic environment. If you look at the encounter tables inside Xanathar's and Mordenkainen's, you can get a list of creatures to expect in random encounters in an Arctic region, and we're using that to kind of determine what animals we would expect you to find.
You can expect to find owls, both giant and regular, deer, elk, wolves, hawks, bears, polar bears and brown bears, saber-toothed tigers, mammoths, and rocks. Also, because this is Icewind Dale in the Forgotten Realms, they have crag cats, a large predatory feline native to the Forgotten Realms.
And it also wouldn't be unusual to find animals like foxes, bison, and rodents also in that area. Because Icewind Dale is so far north, it is bordered both by the Sea of Moving Ice, which is kind of like the Arctic Ocean, and a mountain range called the Spine of the World. So you could also encounter creatures that you would find in a coastal area or in a mountain range.
Creatures like orcas, sharks, crabs, turtles can all be found on the coastal regions of Icewind Dale. And the lakes inside of 10 towns contain various creatures including knucklehead trout.
Right, knucklehead trout are another indigenous creature to the Forgotten Realms inside Icewind Dale. They're kind of like large, fist-headed salmon, and they're one of the main exports and food sources inside of Icewind Dale for the people of 10 towns.
It also wouldn't be unusual to find creatures like octopi and squids, dolphins, seahorses, lobsters, and quippers.
And we could even start encountering creatures that we don't have stat blocks for yet, like walruses and narwhals and sperm whales. Although there is a sperm whale inside the module who will act as a submarine for you. Can't wait for that. Going deeper more into a fantasy world, we're also going to cover the monsters that we think you'll probably encounter.
Giants like frost giants, trolls, ettins, cyclops can all be found in Icewind Dale.
Right, and because it's bordered by the Sea of Moving Ice and the Spine of the World Mountains, you could also encounter storm giants or stone giants in those separate regions. Undead like banshees, ghouls, revenants, zombies, and skeletons can all also be found inside of Icewind Dale.
We know that there will be a frost giant skeleton because we've seen the miniature presented by WizKids.
Also, those same miniatures point that there's going to be a vampire gnoll that you encounter.
We know that there is a Goliath werebear inside the campaign, and since there is a gnoll vampire, you can expect to find various different kinds of gnolls like Flynn's.
Another creature you could encounter inside Icewind Dale are remoras, both juvenile and adult versions, and they're kind of like giant flame cold worms that live in the ice.
Creatures like yetis, behir, and frost salamanders are all common, as are manticores and griffins.
And something to remember about griffins is there was another variety of griffin called a Rime fire griffin that you'll probably encounter as well besides regular griffins. It was kind of the frost version of that creature. Same as trolls, there's known to be an ice troll creature that you'll encounter. This is probably just a regular troll with ice abilities.
An ice golem was also mentioned in the release. This is more than likely an upgraded stone golem with frost abilities.
You could also encounter ice mephits or various water elementals like Marids or water weirds.
Speaking of elementals, we know that you will encounter Chowingas. This was a new kind of an elemental released in the Tomb of Annihilation campaign. You can also expect to find hags like a burr hag or a sea hag.
Another creature commonly found in the frozen north would be a winter wolf, which is a monstrous kind of elemental version of a dire wolf.
And let's not forget dragons.
Of course not. White dragons are well known to be all throughout Icewind Dale.
This also leaves room for white Abishai to be encountered with the white dragons.
What do you think of white dragons?
I dated a white dragon for a while. Pretty, but dumb.
How was that for a relationship?
She liked to give me the cold shoulder and freeze me out.
Now there are a few creatures that we encountered when we were researching this that we want to cover specially. Namely, a tomb tapper, a Shardolin dragon, and a green salati.
The Dungeons & Dragons website has shown that the Frostmaiden is not the only villain the players will encounter. In its description, D&D notes that they will come across the Arcane Brotherhood, as well as find an ancient and terrifying secret in the Hunger Caves.
Now, what are the Hunger Caves? We don't know.
But one aspect of Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden involves the discovery and exploration of an ancient Netherese city buried under the ice.
And the Hunger Caves may tie into this. They may lead you to them, or it may be them themselves. This kind of has an Expedition Barrier Peaks feel, but that might only be wishful thinking on my part.
Netheril was one of the Forgotten Realms' lost empires, and their magic rivaled the gods themselves.
Which is ultimately what led to their demise.
An acropolis buried under the ice, kind of like an Atlantis in Icewind Dale, is what the characters will find and explore.
And the Juggling Dragon and the Tomb Tapper that we discussed earlier all point towards this.
Juggling is a substance used by the Netherese to store magic.
And we've seen Juggling in the past, usually as a fragment of Crenchinnabon, better known as the Crystal Shard, which appeared in the first Dritz novels. You can also find it referenced in the D&D Next campaign, Legacy of the Crystal Shard, which happened between 4th edition and 5th edition. It was kind of that intermediary period.
Inside Legacy of the Crystal Shard, black ice was a material that was found throughout the area of the Frozen Far and northern Faerun. It was magical in nature, having been permeated with the essence of the monolith known as the Crystal Tirith.
And a Crystal Tirith was a giant tower that the Crystal Shard was able to make.
Black ice was a black stone, smooth as glass, and extremely resilient. It was able to withstand the swing of a pickaxe from an experienced miner. It appeared translucent at first, but a trick of the eye caused it to look darker the longer that you looked at it, as it appeared to be drinking in the light.
And if this black ice stone was heated in a forge, it would become soft enough to be able to be used in crafting of things like jewelry and armor and weapons.
Black ice was ice that had been infused with fragments of the Crystal Tower.
When the Crystal Tower was destroyed, fragments and pieces of it infused the surrounding ice, and when they combined, plus time, turned into black ice, this magical stone substance.
Disabled&Dragons are constructs more than likely made from this black ice substance.
Or they could be made of actual Shardlin, which the Netherese were known to use in abundance. You know, the non-evil infused kind.
Tomb Tappers were living constructs created by the Netherese. They were used to protect against the Faerims.
Now there's a ton of lore about the Faerims inside the Forgotten Realms, but they look like giant windsock leeches with 4 arms, and they're really evil. They're part of the reason why the Antarok Desert exists. And there's a good chance this could be that ancient evil that they talk about you unleashing. A Faerim may have been trapped inside the Netherese city when it went under the ice, and has been trapped there, and you might accidentally release it. This plot is very in line with the Thing movie we had brought up earlier. Going to the Arctic, finding a crash site or an excavation site, some kind of hidden monster inside that infects one of the crew, and you don't know who's infected, who's not.
It all fits.
Now, let's talk about the Salati. These are a well-known chaotic creature inside the Forgotten Realms and Dungeons & Dragons in general.
Artwork of a green Salati has appeared in the release.
And remember how we told you they took inspiration from Aliens and The Thing and H.P. Lovecraft stuff? Well, something about the Salati that you may or may not know is that they reproduce by infecting their hosts with a larval egg that grows inside them and eventually bursts out of their chest.
Sound familiar?
That's the red Salati that do that. There's another blue Salati that can infect you with something called a chaos phage that slowly turns you into a Salati. This idea of being infected and having a alien creature burst from your chest is pretty fitting with the alien theme inspiration.
You should note that Faerim also reproduce in this manner. They have a stinger at the end of their windsock tail, which they use to inject an egg into a victim.
These creatures all seem fitting and in line with the ideas of Alien and Thing and H.P. Lovecraftian ideas. So you can probably expect to encounter at least some of these creatures inside the campaign.
Artis Cimber will probably be encountered somehow. In the year 1362 DR, Artis discovered the Ring of Winter.
And this was a magical artifact that was said to be able to cause the entire planet to be covered in ice and snow.
At some point after this, during the Spell Plague in 1385, Artis became a chosen of Auril.
An artist has been referenced a few times. You could encounter his son inside Icewind Dale in one of the previous campaigns, and you also met him in person inside the Tomb of Annihilation. along with his friend and Sorrel Paladin Dragonbait.
Dragonbait was from a different old Dungeons & Dragons novel called Azure Bonds.
Right, maybe if we get lucky we'll encounter his partner, Alias, inside this campaign somewhere. But again, that might be wishful thinking. I also think there's good justification to find the Sorrowsworn, particularly the Lost and the Lonely, inside Icewind Dale somewhere. It seems fitting with the theme.
As well as creatures like larval mages, gibbering mouthers, and gelatinous cubes. These would all easily fit inside the theme presented for Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden.
And because it's Icewind Dale, a place that was popularized by the Dritz novels, we might even encounter some of the companions of the Hall.
Though not likely. In 1450, Dritz, Brunner, and Puent were all searching for Gondelgrims since 1409. And Wolfgar, Regis, and Canterbury had all since passed on.
Right, and they weren't scheduled to be reincarnated until 1463, which happens 13 years after this campaign supposedly takes place.
There could also be some interesting tie-ins with the legacy of the Crystal Shard campaign, which is set to take place in 1485 DR. This campaign also dealt with the Dark Brotherhood, a chosen of Auril,
which was a barbarian from the tribe of the Elk, same as Wolfgar, named Hendred Arnsforth.
And remnants of the Crystal Shard causing problems for Icewind Dale.
And one final thing, and I think this is the most important one, something that we definitely would expect to encounter, are 6-foot-tall giant penguins.
That's a bit of an Easter egg.
Right, but I also think it would be a missed opportunity if we don't encounter any. And that's about it. These are the creatures that we were expecting to encounter inside Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden. There could be more, and supposedly there's a lot of new creature stats that are being written up. But hopefully this is enough to get you started on how to prepare for the upcoming module. And now for Quill's Joke of the Day. Quill?
What do you get when you cross a frost giant with a great white shark?
I don't know. What do you get when you cross a frost giant with a great white shark?
Frostbite.
Anyway, tune in next time where we'll continue this adventure.
And don't forget to join us next week when our special guest will be the star and DM of the hit show Relics and Rarities, the lovely Miss Deborah Ann Wool.
And we'd like to offer our most heartfelt apologies to Sam Riegel and Liam O'Brien. Sorry guys, we wanted to get you on the show, we just ran out of time. And that's about it. Say goodbye, Quill.
Goodbye, Quill.
And we'll see you next time.
Yeah, 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 yeah.